Colleen Osborne disappeared on Thursday, March 15th, 1984. When a person disappears without a trace, often the most critical information is hidden in their actions and words from the days before they vanished. Colleen Osborne's last known whereabouts may hold the clues to what happened to her. A struggling single mother discovers her rebellious daughter has skipped school yet again.
She was upset. Colleen would act out a lot.
My mom and her would get into little tussles.
But when the 15-year-old vanishes into the crowds of Daytona Beach spring break, anger turns to panic.
She's 5 foot tall, blonde hair, in a bathing suit. There's a couple of them.
We just had no witnesses. She just disappeared.
A link to a notorious serial killer has investigators on edge.
From what I understand, he liked younger girls that had a nice figure.
But then, a cryptic letter causes police to question their line of thinking.
Anything's possible.
That's the worst possible thing a person could do.
Will this be the end to a 17-year-old mystery?
Somebody dropped the ball big time. I'm not going to forgive people for that.
It's mid-March, 1984, in sunny Daytona Beach, Florida. The hum of 100 Harleys fills the ocean air as annual Bike Week draws to a close.
You had the racers coming in, followed immediately by the bikers, and then right into spring break, so it was just one party to the next, which kept it very lively.
15-year-old Colleen Osborne and her teenage friends are having the time of their lives.
Once the weather started getting warm, it was going down to the beach and watching the cars go by and see what people we could meet and what people that we knew that would be down there. Colleen was always very social.
1984, the height of spring break, a lot of people in town. Hundreds of thousands of people come into Daytona Beach.
This year was definitely the coming of age for us. It was trying to stretch our wings and feel more independent and act older than we really were.
With Colleen and her mother's recent move to a beachside apartment on Butler Boulevard, the adventurous teenage girl is now living just blocks from the heart of the action.
She was looking forward to moving to the new apartment because it was closer to the beach. Now she didn't have to take a bus to get over to the beachside or rely on rides from her friends and family.
It was Daytona Beach, the place to be. The beach was right there. You go to school, come home, there's the beach. It was a kid's, a young girl's dream.
In March, there is plenty going on for a young girl like Colleen to be excited about.
The band shell, which is a little local venue, was having all kinds of free concerts. National known groups were going to be here.
There were a lot of students that were skipping school to go to the free concerts.
Music is a huge part of Colleen's life. She is determined to see as many shows this spring break as she can.
She liked music a lot. She was very much into all the different groups of that time.
Colleen carefully marks the concert dates in her calendar, so she is sure not to miss a beat. It is shaping up to be a perfect spring day in Daytona Beach. As Frances Osborne scrambles to get ready for her new part-time job, her daughter Colleen lies in bed, motionless. Her mother tells her sternly that it's her responsibility to get out of bed.
My mom had tried to wake her and said, "You've missed the school bus, but, take public transportation," and left her some money for the regular bus.
Since Colleen's mother, Frances, had been out of work for some time due to an illness, keeping this job is important to her, and there's no way she can chance arriving late.
She'd just gotten out of the hospital, so she was hoping that this would be, a new start for them, that she would have this job that would make it easier for them.
Frances leaves the apartment for work, hoping that her daughter will do the right thing. Later that day, Colleen's mother returns home from work. To her dismay, she finds the bus money still sitting on the kitchen counter. Frances jots down the events from that morning in her journal, a record of Colleen's latest attempt to assert her independence. She is livid, knowing that it hasn't even been 24 hours since she and Colleen were at odds over her daughter's truancies.
Colleen said that she was going to go to a concert at the band shell on the 14th, and her mother told her she couldn't go, and she went anyhow.
Apparently, their resulting argument about the importance of school from the night before has had little impact on her youngest daughter.
Her thing was that you needed to get your education. You don't not go to school. There's no excuse for it.
But the move to Beachside, along with her mother's difficult financial situation, had just forced Colleen to change schools for the third time in 2 years. Although she is extremely bright and well-liked by both teachers and peers, Colleen is not happy with her latest junior high.
It's more of a city school. It's lower income. It's a tougher school.
Before transferring, Colleen had been enrolled in a small parochial school where she had made many good friends over the course of a few months.
I think we were friends from the first day. She was very strong-willed, very determined. And to me, socially, she seemed to be more of a natural leader.
Just as Colleen started to carve out a role for herself at that school, her mother became ill and was unable to cover the costs of tuition, causing her daughter to leave her newfound friends behind.
I remember she was upset that she had to leave, and all I heard from Christmas on was how much she did not like her new school and wanted to come back.
As Colleen's mother sits in an empty apartment with no sign of her daughter, she wonders if perhaps Colleen is acting out on purpose. And if she is, the message reads loud and clear. Frances calls other family members to see if they have heard from her baby. Since they live nearby, it is common for Colleen to run to their houses when she and her mother are not seeing eye to eye.
Later on that day, my mom had called me and said, had I heard from Col? It was common for her to sometimes take the bus up to my work or call me.
Colleen's sister Margaret tells their mother that she has not heard from Colleen all day. In fact, nobody in the family has heard from her. Although Colleen could be defiant, in the past, she always left a note or let someone know where she was going.
It's not like Colleen not to call and not to check in, so my mom was very worried very early.
Coming up, a family's concern intensifies when they notice some things no teenager would leave behind.
Wherever she was going, she wasn't planning on going far.
At the height of spring break, 1984, 15-year-old Colleen Osborne is testing boundaries with her mother. Since the two live only blocks from all the main events, Colleen has skipped school on occasion to go to beachside concerts. Then, on Thursday, March 15th, Colleen's mother comes home from work to an unusually quiet apartment. With no note saying where Colleen has gone, her mother begins to worry. She decides to poke around her daughter's bedroom.
There was an indication at my mom's apartment that she had taken just beach items. There were beach shoes, flip-flops, and a swimsuit that had previously been there. We thought might be what she was wearing.
As Frances digs deeper, she notices that her daughter not only left her set of keys to the apartment on top of the dresser, but her change purse as well.
She had left other money that she had gotten for her birthday, so wherever she was going, she wasn't planning on going far.
Colleen's mother finds the calendar that her daughter has been using to record all upcoming events. What she finds makes perfect sense.
There was a concert at the band shell that day, so there was an assumption that she just went to the concert and just didn't come home.
Although worried, Frances hopes Colleen is just being a rebellious teen and will come home once the spring break festivities end for the day. But as the hours pass and the sun sets without any sign of her defiant teenage daughter, the silence becomes deafening. When morning comes and still no word from Colleen, her older sister Margaret comes to the apartment to help her mother track her down. A quick glance at her sister's things, and she knows Colleen was not planning on being gone long.
In the 80s, girls will not be seen without their makeup. You know, makeup and hair done is very important, and that was there. The makeup was still there.
But another day passes, and Colleen never comes home to collect her things. Colleen's mother and sister begin making desperate calls to Colleen's friends off a phone list they find taped to her bedroom wall.
That evening, called as many of the friends as we could get in touch with, drove to the beach, drove over to the band shell, up and down the beach, around the area. Nobody had seen her. Nobody had heard from her.
They can't get any confirmation that Colleen ever made it to school, or even that she skipped school to hang out with friends. As far as they can tell, Colleen's mother is the last person to have seen Colleen.
Both of us were mad. Why is she being inconsiderate, being a teenager? Somebody's looking for you. How do you not know somebody's looking for you? We contacted the police that night, and they told us we had to wait 48 hours.
The Osborne family is asked to sit tight. Police think Colleen will likely come home before the 48 hours are up. But to the family, that is not an option. They need to begin looking for Colleen immediately.
We made up a flyer right away, just kind of put it together, taped her school picture, and handwrote missing and her information, and put them around the city, around Beachside.
At this point, young people are flooding into Daytona Beach for spring break. There are many young women who could easily fit Colleen's description, making the search for her very difficult.
She's a 5-foot-tall girl in a bathing suit, blonde hair. There's a couple of them.
4 days after Colleen Osborne is last seen in her Butler Boulevard apartment, her mother Frances files a missing persons report with the Daytona Beach Police. Since she tells the officer taking the report that Colleen has run away in the past, and that they did have an argument prior to her daughter's disappearance, police initially treat Colleen's case as a juvenile runaway. Frances Osborne immediately blames herself for her daughter's absence.
She knew Colleen was having a hard time. I think that evening, my mom just felt like maybe she could have done something, said something different to her.
For the previous 3 years, Colleen has been subjected to difficult times on the home front. When Colleen was just 12 years old, living in Darby, Pennsylvania, her mother and father's already failing relationship took a turn for the worse. As the baby of the family, and the only sibling out of 6 still living at home, Colleen was often witness to her parents' increasingly volatile marriage.
Colleen kind of got caught in the crossfire, which I know caused a lot of anger.
After 25 years of marriage, Frances Osborne decided it was necessary for her and her youngest daughter Colleen to leave the family home behind.
Colleen needed something that was normal and safe, and that's what she got here in Florida. My grandparents and my mom made it safe for her.
But with little financial help from her father and her mother's fragile health, daily life was often stressful for the maturing teen.
Colleen would act out a lot. But then again, being 14 and 15 years old, it's something that's also a part of that age, where you are acting out whether you have a reason to or not.
As Frances waits for her daughter to come home, she wonders if the pressure has become too much for Colleen to handle. Could Colleen have left home intentionally in search of an easier life? If so, Daytona Beach is the perfect place to do so.
We had a lot of runaway young people. You'd have people from Massachusetts and Maine and New York that were 12 to 14 years old. There were arguments with mom and dad. They'd come down on our beach side and they'd try to work out a living.
The day after the missing persons report is filed with the police, an investigator is assigned to what seems to be a simple case of a teenage runaway.
I called the mother to see if she had returned home, and she said no. And I said, please call me if she did. She said, well, she's run away before, and she usually comes back in 2 or 3 days, but she hadn't come back.
My mom and her would get into little tussles, that happens. But it's not like she ran away, because my mom knew where she would go. It was either my house or my cousin's house.
She never gave any indication that she ever wanted to get out of her situation or would never leave her mother, who she felt actually a very strong responsibility for.
She just didn't seem like that kind of girl that didn't care about her family.
Although there are no indications of foul play, police start to take Colleen's case seriously.
As time went on, it was evident she wasn't coming back. So we started checking at the school with her friends, and nobody had seen her. We just had no witnesses. She just disappeared.
Coming up, a nationwide manhunt for an infamous sexual predator hits home in Daytona Beach.
The Howard Johnsons really wasn't that far from where Colleen lived.
When 15-year-old Colleen Osborne goes missing after skipping school during spring break in Daytona Beach, police initially believe she has run away. They advise the family that in their experience, teens return home when they are ready.
Nobody cared. Kids ran away all the time. Back then it was, a common occurrence.
By now, over 2 weeks have passed since Colleen was last seen by her mother, fast asleep in bed. And family and police are still in the dark as to her whereabouts. But before long, the search for Colleen will take a dramatic turn. Unbeknownst to the Osbornes, a much larger investigation is brewing on a national level that could shed light on why the young girl from Daytona Beach vanished on March 15th.
The FBI today added the name of Christopher Wilder to its 10 most wanted list. Wilder, a 39-year-old race car driver, is charged with kidnapping one woman, and he is suspected in the death or the disappearance of 6 others from Florida to Nevada.
I was contacted by the local FBI agent in Daytona Beach. He said there was a fellow that they were looking at that was involved in the disappearance of some other females throughout the United States.
When mapping out the trail of victims allegedly targeted by this serial killer, it looks like the fugitive could have passed right through Daytona Beach as he began his reign of terror against young, beautiful women.
From what I understand, he liked younger girls that had a nice figure. He would tell them he was in the modeling business.
As they try to track down one of the most feared men in America, the FBI finds out Wilder checked into a Howard Johnson's motel in Daytona Beach on the day Colleen Osborne disappeared.
The Howard Johnsons really wasn't that far from where Colleen lived. It was at 92 and 95, and she lived on the beachside in Daytona Beach.
Wilder checked out of the roadside motel the next morning at 5:05 a.m. Colleen Osborne has not been seen since then. The coincidence is enough for investigators to actively pursue this terrifying lead.
Pretty much around the same time that the Christopher Wilder connection was made, there was much more interest in Colleen, both with the police and the media.
Investigator Larry Lewis fears Colleen Osborne might have been a prime target for Wilder, given his modus operandi.
You have all kinds of people coming in and out of Daytona Beach, especially on the beachside, because that's where all the motels are. That's where the band shell is. And you had all kinds of kids here, from high school kids to college kids. They're all here having a good time. It's good pickings for a guy like Christopher Bernard Wilder.
The media, of course, was blowing up with reports of the number of young women that he had kidnapped and murdered throughout Florida and then worked his way up across the nation.
Officials of the Miss America pageant have warned directors of state beauty contests to be on the lookout for Christopher Wilder.
The implication that she may have been his victim was very hard on my mom.
As Wilder's killing spree continues, both police and Colleen's family want nothing more than to rule out a possible connection between the two. Almost 1 month after Colleen was last seen, police used the media to ask for help with the missing teen's case.
We put Colleen's picture in the newspaper trying to see if anybody had found her or knew where she had gone.
When Daytona Beach locals see the picture of the missing teenage girl, calls start pouring into the police department with Colleen sightings.
Calls would lead us to locations on the beach side, maybe a boarding house. We would check those locations, And on numerous occasions, we did find young ladies, and obviously somebody believed that it could have been Colleen, but it wasn't. So we had a lot of leads, and none of them were fruitful at the time.
Meanwhile, the man on the FBI's top 10 most wanted list, Christopher Wilder, is still at large. The day after Colleen's picture appears in the local paper, one of her classmates, a girl named Angela, steps forward with bone-chilling information.
This girl came forward saying that she knew Colleen and that she had this altercation with this fellow over on the beach side and thought it might have something to do with the case.
So she told us how she had been approached.
Angela was hanging out with her boyfriend in a vacant school lot on the morning of March 15th, when a male in his late 30s, wearing mirrored sunglasses, drove up in a blue-gray luxury sedan. The well-groomed man behind the wheel motioned to her to come closer to the car. He told Angela she had model good looks and that he could make her famous.
He said he was with a sports magazine or some type of magazine and that he needed to take some pictures. And, as a matter of fact, did take some pictures of her.
The stranger offered the girl $100 to pose for the camera, but she declined. Angela was getting a bad feeling from the way he was looking at her.
He tried to entice her into getting in a car with him so that she could go on this modeling career with him. But she never did. She didn't get in the car, so she was lucky.
What Angela remembers seeing after the stranger drove away is very unsettling.
After soliciting her, the gentleman in the car turned onto Butler, which is the street that Colleen lived on.
Colleen's house on Butler Boulevard was only 2 or 3 blocks from the area where Angela had contact with the person who we think was Wilder. Only a couple of blocks.
Investigators show Angela and her boyfriend several pictures to see if they can identify the mystery man as Christopher Wilder.
They did pick 2 pictures out, and one of them was Wilder. But I had no one that could really place him on the beachside positively, other than I knew he was in town that day.
Investigators wonder if Wilder had approached Colleen in the same way he allegedly tried to entice her classmate. Would she have taken the bait?
She had great sense of herself. She was very confident. Very, very confident. She thought, she was invincible. She was 15.
Knowing Colleen's personality, I absolutely can see her embracing that opportunity. And as an adult now, I realize he tapped into every aspect of appeal for a teenager.
Coming up, the pursuit of a notorious killer comes to an abrupt end. Will investigators find the missing link to Colleen?
I collected her hairbrush, a curling iron, thinking it may have some type of evidence on it.
Get more Disappeared online at investigationdiscovery.com. After a disturbing discovery, Daytona Beach police are concerned that 15-year-old Colleen Osborne might not have run away from home after all. The FBI places a murderous fugitive, Christopher Wilder, in Daytona Beach the day Colleen went missing. Then, an eyewitness comes forward to say she saw a man she believes to have been Wilder drive down Colleen's street after she herself refused his solicitation. Investigators fear Colleen might have been one of his victims.
We had developed information that Wilder was in town and he had possibly killed Colleen and buried her someplace as the other bodies that they had already found.
But without Colleen's body, investigators can only wait and hope the manhunt for Wilder will soon come to an end. Just one day after police take Colleen's classmates' harrowing testimony about her run-in with the man they think was Wilder, there is breaking news.
Authorities in Colebrook, New Hampshire today say accused killer Christopher Wilder died accidentally in a struggle with police.
Parents of young women across the nation breathe a sigh of relief. But for investigators working missing persons cases and families of the missing, news of Wilder's death after a month-long killing spree elicits a new fear.
Authorities are now concerned that Wilder's death will make it more difficult to find Cheryl Bonaventura and other women who are still missing, women thought to be his victims.
Federal investigators find an array of articles left behind in Wilder's car and hope they can be identified by families or friends of the missing. But nothing can be traced back to the 15-year-old girl from Daytona Beach.
Of the women Wilder is suspected of kidnapping and killing, agents say that 4 of them still are missing tonight.
With no hard evidence, Colleen's name does not make the FBI's list of 4 possible victims who may be connected to Wilder's reign of terror. But Daytona Beach police are still unwilling to let go of the idea.
I felt that Colleen probably was one of his victims and that she eventually would turn up.
Detective Lewis contacts Colleen's mother and asks to come by the house to collect some of her daughter's things, hoping that someday they can be used as evidence.
I collected her hairbrush, a curling iron. I collected some of her personal items like a teddy bear that she had, thinking it may have some type of evidence on it.
1984 was before the days of DNA testing, but hair could still be a useful tool when comparing a strand from a missing person to one from an unidentified body under a microscope.
Also took a sample of all the nail polish that I could find that she might have used and wrote down what the make was and the color was, just in case I needed it, in case we found a body.
In a further attempt to connect Wilder to Colleen, Detective Lewis sends a hair sample from the curling iron to the FBI.
They had his car, and we sent materials to see if we could find those hairs or anything in his car, and they never did come up with a link.
Six days after Wilder dies, Detective Lewis receives a message about a gruesome discovery 50 miles from Daytona Beach in Ocala National Forest.
They put out that they had found a body, and anybody missing a person, please contact them.
Have they at last found the remains of Colleen Osborne? In order to identify the young Jane Doe, police try to obtain Colleen's dental records, but are unsuccessful.
We weren't able to get dental records for Colleen due to the move and the separation of my parents.
Although there are no dental records, Colleen's mother, Frances, tells the detective Colleen broke her arm 2 years earlier in Daytona Beach.
I obtained a copy of that x-ray from the doctor, who said that if the bone were dissected, they may be able to identify the area that was broken.
With Colleen's x-ray in hand, Detective Lewis heads out to the county where the body was found.
I actually went to the autopsy in Lake County and got with a medical examiner over there. He had the bone ready and dissected, and we saw no evidence of that damage to the bone. Also from that body, we took hair samples and submitted them to Sanford Crime Lab, and they compared them against some items I took from Colleen's house, a curling iron and a hairbrush, and they said that the hairs were not similar. So I was pretty sure the body in Lake County was not Colleen.
But to be certain, Colleen's sister must do what no family member should have to do. She is asked to look at some crime scene photos to see if any of the items left with the body could have belonged to her sister.
We had to look at pictures of some articles of clothing that were found, a night shirt, a pajama shirt.
She is confident these things are not Colleen's.
They told us within a few days that because of the x-ray that it wasn't Colleen. So that was a relief.
That young woman found in Lake County remains unidentified to this day. Days later, while the images of the clothing left behind on the murdered girl in Ocala National Forest are still fresh in Colleen's sister's mind, she is notified by the police about another horrifying discovery. This time, the news is kept from Colleen's mother until they have proof.
There's a lot of things my mom was just unable to deal with. She did not have the strength.
According to the Orange County Sheriff's Office, a fisherman was scouting for a fishing hole in an area behind Disney World when he stumbled upon what appeared to be a human knee sticking out of a pile of debris.
She was found in a shallow grave next to a lake. She was decomposed, but still had her teeth intact.
There weren't any identifying articles with her. She had apparently been dead about 10 days to 2 weeks at that point.
The young woman is said to be 15 to 16 years old, around 5'3", weighing approximately 110 pounds. All characteristics that match Colleen.
There's still some polish on her nails, some pink polish, and they did find some trauma on her.
Since the Daytona Beach police have just gone through the same process with the Lake County Medical Examiner, they're more prepared this time around.
I actually sent to them a copy of the x-ray.
The presiding medical examiner finds no indication that the unidentified girl had ever broken her arm.
I also explained to them that I had sent samples of her hair to the Sanford Crime Lab.
And they compared that to a hair from the deceased individual that we had. And they did a microscopic comparison, and they said that they weren't the same person.
After a variety of other observations, the medical examiner concludes that this is yet another body that cannot be linked to the young missing teen from Daytona Beach.
They made the determination there was nothing more they could get from having the body here. The county buried it in an indigent plot in their county cemetery. They at least saved the mandible and the skull.
Now, Central Florida has a second teenage Jane Doe, also victim of homicide, lying in a grave unidentified, while a family somewhere is desperate to find their loved one. Coming up, could an anonymous letter and an identification solve the 27-year-old mystery?
Show me all the evidence, then I'll believe it.
On March 15th, 1984, beautiful, spontaneous Colleen Osborne disappears without a trace after leaving her beachside apartment during the height of spring break. Sadly, in 1989, 5 years after her youngest daughter vanished, Frances Osborne dies, never knowing what really happened to her baby. As weeks, months, and years pass, Colleen's siblings are haunted by ongoing speculation as to what happened to their little sister. In 2001, almost 2 decades after Colleen disappeared, a mysterious letter is delivered to her brother's home in Daytona Beach. The handwritten letter carries unbearable news.
Her brother received a letter from an unknown person in New Hampshire who stated that he had killed his sister and had placed her body somewhere near the Tomoka River on I-4.
From the way the author describes the area, it is apparent that he is not familiar with the places he names.
I knew it wasn't somebody from the area because we don't call it Interstate 4, we call it I-4. And nobody in the area calls it Route 415, we call it Tomoka Farms Road. So it was somebody that was visiting, which Bike Week was ending at the same time. And people hang around, so it could have been anybody.
The person who wrote the letter claims he is dying and begs for the family's forgiveness.
He wanted to make amends or get forgiveness from her family that he had killed her and left my sister's body on the side of the road.
Police from the Volusia County Sheriff's Office investigate the letter. Colleen Osborne's case returns to Larry Lewis, who is now the head of the fingerprinting division. The letter comes as a shock to him.
Anything's possible. I mean, I really didn't know for sure that Christopher Bernard Wilder was the person that got Colleen. I felt sure that he might have been, but I couldn't be positive.
Forensics are done on the cryptic letter to try and garner clues.
We did some tests on the letter. We sent the envelope to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement looking for DNA. We did fingerprint analysis on the paper that was sent to us, and we didn't come up with proof positive of who sent that letter.
By examining the postmark, investigators pinpoint the post office in New Hampshire where the letter originated. They send a message to the alleged killer through a local newspaper, pleading for compassion, hoping to get more information on where the body was discarded. They get no response. Back in Florida, Colleen's family just wants to find their little sister and put an end to the 17-year-old mystery.
At first, I was very frustrated with the lack of search. All of us wanted to just go out there and start looking. Why aren't we looking?
You're talking about 5,000 square mile. That's a lot of area to try to cover, but why not give it a shot?
We did go out there and look. Of course, we're like 15 or 16 years after the disappearance, and we didn't find anything.
After a thorough investigation, detectives are convinced that the letter is not a confession, but a very cruel hoax.
If they were really dying and wanted to fess up, why not just come forward and tell people about it?
If it was a hoax, that's the worst possible thing a person could do to another human being. I don't understand that.
Once again, the Osbournes are left with unanswered questions, and yet another horrifying scenario of what could have happened to Colleen back in the spring of 1984. As hard as it has been for the Osbournes, hope rarely dies for the family members of the missing.
I think that's a way of coping, is that you could imagine her, alive. Imagine her living a life.
I never would say that she was gone. Show me all the evidence, then I'll believe it.
Then, after 27 years of not knowing whether Colleen is alive or dead, Colleen's sister receives a strange call. It's in reference to the second Jane Doe that was found near Disney World shortly after Colleen went missing.
A news reporter contacted me and asked if I was aware of the body in Orange County that had been ruled out and that they were looking into it again. I said I really wasn't aware of that.
Colleen's sister Margaret has kept on top of the case, even almost 3 decades later. She regularly visits a website where people comment on missing persons cases. Colleen's case has been a hot topic lately, as bloggers question why the Jane Doe was ruled out when there were so many similarities to Colleen. It's a sketch done by a forensic artist that catches Margaret's attention.
It's an artist drawing of a young girl's face, small features and curly hair, and very, very much like Colleen, very similar. Could easily have been an artist drawing of her.
A few weeks after receiving the reporter's phone call, the Osbournes are contacted by the Orange County Medical Examiner's Office, headed by Dr. Jan Garavaglia, who also hosts the TV show Dr. G Medical Examiner. The news is explosive.
They just said they had found Colleen. They said, well, it's 90% sure.
When Dr. Garavaglia took over the medical examiner's office in 2004, she made it her mission to try to find names for all the unidentified bodies that had passed through the morgue.
We wanted to make sure that we were doing everything we could to help identify these individuals.
Many of the bodies came to the morgue before DNA testing was available, which in the past had sometimes made identification difficult.
Ultimately, the science wasn't there, and once we had the opportunity to go with a better method, we took it.
A lab is asked to extract DNA from all the bone evidence kept at the morgue over the years.
All of them slowly got their DNA sent to the FBI.
They have been compared to family members of the missing, who have voluntarily submitted their DNA samples in hopes of one day finding their loved ones. Then, in 2010, Dr. Garavaglia receives a call from the FBI, saying there has been a credible hit linking the unidentified girl to a woman who lives near Daytona Beach.
Our deceased mitochondrial DNA matched the mitochondrial DNA that was submitted by Colleen Osborne's sister.
However, because identification through mitochondrial DNA has a small percentage of error, Dr. Garavaglia plans to make a final determination that her Jane Doe is Colleen by using a unique method.
I happened to notice that the missing photograph of Colleen had her teeth showing in a beautiful smile.
The medical examiner intends to compare the contour of Colleen's teeth in the photo to the Jane Doe's teeth, which have been kept at the morgue as evidence for the past 27 years.
So I'm very confident that it will probably be Colleen Osborne.
The likelihood that Colleen has been identified is bittersweet for her friends and family, who have spent their entire adult lives searching in vain.
It was a shock and very frustrating. So frustrating to know that they've had her body all this time and ruled it out with a simple x-ray.
They didn't do the standard that should have been done.
Records show no indication the medical examiner ever x-rayed the body's actual bone. It appears as if he relied on a general radiology report, saying all bones were normal. According to Dr. Garavaglia, this was only one of several erroneous judgments made in 1984. Perhaps the most confounding is when Colleen was ruled out because of the hair from the curling iron.
The family clearly states there are 2 other sisters in the household, and she had 5 dear friends that were constantly over the house. She said there is no way that she could confirm that the only person that used that curling iron was Colleen.
Although angry that mistakes were made in the past, Colleen's family cannot thank Dr. Garavaglia enough for revisiting their sister's case.
The other people dropped the ball ahead of her, and she's just tenacious enough that she finally looked at stuff like 2 and 2 make 6.
They said no, it's not her. Maybe I should have pushed a little harder, but I went with what they said. And if it's her, I'm glad we finally located her and I know what happened.
On July 20th, 2011, Dr. Garavaglia makes the final determination and declares Colleen Osborne deceased. The search for the young teenage girl who mysteriously went missing at the height of spring break in Daytona Beach in 1984 is over. Now the question that remains is who killed Colleen Osborne on that fateful spring day?
I don't want to know how she died. I don't want to know how bad it could have been,
I believe that Christopher Bernard Wilder was in Daytona Beach on March the 15th and got her in the car and probably killed her before he left Daytona Beach. I think that possibly Colleen was one of his first victims.
You try to deal with it, but you never deal with it. And I'll probably remember about the rest of my life.
All of Colleen's siblings are left feeling their little sister's absence in their own lives.
She was a great friend. She was a good sister. She was such a smart girl.
It is painful knowing that Colleen was senselessly robbed of so much.
She never had a chance to grow up. She never had kids of her own. She never got a chance to, fulfill life. It was taken away from her for no reason.
Brianna Maitland disappeared on March 19th, 2004. When a person disappears without a trace, often the most critical information is hidden in their actions and words from the days before they vanished. Brianna Maitland's last known whereabouts may hold the clues to what happened to her. Beautiful 17-year-old Brianna Maitland is restless in her remote northern Vermont hometown.
Bri had a free spirit, but she always wanted something bigger and better.
One night she vanishes after work, but family and friends don't find out for days.
My mind was like, find her right now.
Soon, it becomes alarmingly clear Brianna is not a runaway.
I saw a picture of the car, and I thought I was gonna lose it.
All this amidst a rural drug epidemic.
We're in upstate Vermont, and not a lot for the young kids to do.
Disturbing rumors quickly spread.
Your daughter's been dumped in the lake where, drug-related people took her out.
she may have been abducted because she's a beautiful young woman, which happens all the time.
It's Friday morning, March 19th, 2004, and 17-year-old Brianna Maitland heads out for breakfast with her mother, just before taking a high school equivalency exam. Getting a diploma is a milestone Brianna's been looking forward to ever since she dropped out of high school and moved away from her parents' remote farm in northern Vermont. Brianna's mother, Kelly, remembers that tumultuous period, which began 6 months earlier.
We went through the usual teenage conflicts, and Brianna was strong-willed, and she was getting more and more independent, and she's highly social and wanted to be with friends.
At the time, Brianna's circle of friends lived over 15 miles away and attended a different high school. Her friend, Shauna LaBelle, understood why Brianna was eager to leave her current school and join friends at theirs.
Brianna didn't have a lot of friends. Not a lot of people really understood her or gave her a chance. High school kids are cruel. You get judged so easily based upon how you act or dress or what you drive. And Bri didn't always have the best of everything. She was always worried about her looks or her reputation or how good she was doing in school. But it didn't ever seem to turn out the way that she wanted it to.
Even though she had difficulties fitting in, Brianna was an attractive and smart young woman, with an instinct to think of others before herself.
She would stop for a hitchhiker, even against my advice. And yet, one day I came home from work and she had picked up a hitchhiker, a young teenage boy, and there he was in my living room waiting to get a ride to go somewhere else. But she was a person of compassion.
But Brianna also struggled to find her own direction.
On October 8th, 2003, she turned 17, and with that was a growing need for freedom, wanting to come and go on her terms. And she decided that she would move in with a friend. I tried to dissuade her, and she said, well, I'm still gonna go.
Brianna moved in with a friend near the new high school where she enrolled. But just over a month later, in early December, she ended up bouncing from house to house, living with 2 different boyfriends and their families. Eventually, in late February of 2004, Brianna dropped out of high school once and for all, and moved in with her childhood friend, Jillian Stout. Brianna felt more settled there, and joined a high school equivalency program. She hoped to put all the upheaval behind her. On that mid-March morning in 2004, Brianna Maitland completes the GED exam, and her mother takes her shopping, one of her favorite pastimes.
Brianna could go to a clothes store and pick out the latest avant-garde fashion, put it on, come out, model, and it would be show-stopping.
At one store, Brianna and her mother are waiting in a checkout line, when something outside the store catches Brianna's attention.
She looked out the window, and all of a sudden she said to me, I'll be right back. And she left. I didn't see what store she went to or what had happened. I got my things, I came out of the store, and she met me in the parking lot and went to the car. I hadn't known where she had been, and it was odd, she didn't have a shopping bag.
Kelly notices that Brianna seems visibly shaken.
She was agitated, I've got to get ready for work, and, I've got to get back. And the whole mood kind of changed then.
Kelly considers asking Brianna what was troubling her, but she doesn't want to be pushy or violate her privacy. So she takes Brianna back to her roommate Jillian's house.
I dropped her off and we said bye, and I'll see you, yeah, I'll call you. And I never thought that would be the last time we would say bye to each other.
Later that afternoon, before leaving for work, Brianna writes a note to Jillian, saying she would be back home later that night. That evening, Brianna's getting backed up in her shift as a dishwasher at the Black Lantern Inn in Montgomery. The restaurant is having a busy night. Brianna's parents, Kelly and Bruce, happen to be out at a local establishment just a few miles away. On the way home, they pass by the Black Lantern.
And I had said, shall we stop in and check in on her? And Bruce said, well, we don't want to embarrass her in front of the people that have hired her, that they think, oh, now we have to have the parents in here snooping and checking it out. So he said, we'll just trust her. We'll just go on. Drove by, and it was this huge mistake.
After a busy shift, the kitchen is cleaned. The staff clocks out and socializes. But Brianna can't stick around. She says she has to go home to get some sleep before going to her second job at another restaurant the next morning.
She was seen leaving the Black Lantern Inn in her vehicle and was seen driving away.
This is the last time Brianna Maitland is seen before she disappears. But it will take several days before anyone even realizes she is gone. Coming up, the moment every parent fears.
I got chills. There's something instinctive that I was just revulsed.
Friday night, March 19th, 2004. 17-year-old Brianna Maitland finishes her shift as a dishwasher at a northwestern Vermont restaurant and tells everyone she's heading home. Earlier that night, Brianna's roommate Jillian Stout came across a message Brianna had written.
Brianna had left her a note that she would be home after work later that night.
But shortly after reading the note, Jillian left the house to spend the weekend away. 2 days later, on Sunday the 21st, she returns home to find the note untouched. And there's no sign of Brianna.
Jillian assumed that Brianna may have gone to her family's or another friend's house, so there was nothing to indicate there was anything wrong at that point. As the days went by and still no one had heard from her, obviously the concern became more apparent.
2 more days pass before anyone even thinks of looking for Brianna. On Tuesday, 4 days after anyone reported seeing Brianna, her roommate Jillian calls the Maitlands.
Jillian said, hey, is Brianna there? And I said, well, no, I thought she was with you. And Jillian said, oh no, I thought she was either with a boyfriend or with you. And we were like, well, where's Brianna then?
Kelly contacts Brianna's friends, boyfriends, and employers, but none of them has heard from or seen her daughter in days. Then, she calls her husband Bruce, who's away making sales calls in New York.
And I said, we haven't been able to get a hold of Brianna, and it's just not like her.
Brianna's father jumps into his car to drive all night back to his family's home. Meanwhile, Kelly calls 911 to report Brianna missing.
They entered Brianna into the National Crime Information Center as a missing juvenile at that point, which would have gone out to law enforcement agencies.
The next day, Wednesday, the Maitlands make more frantic phone calls and drive around areas Brianna frequented. Kelly also wonders if Brianna ran away. She's close to her Aunt Tammy in Pittsburgh. Perhaps she's gone there.
Kelly had called my home a couple times, but I was not home, and I got the message that if Brianna shows up at the door, I'm supposed to call Kelly. I thought, well, there must be some misunderstanding because I'm not expecting Brianna to come here. And I had no idea that all this was going on.
Grasping for a logical explanation, Brianna's closest friend wonders if she's gone to one of the large cities where she often dreamed of moving.
She had told me that she wanted to think about moving to New York City or to Montreal because she wanted more than there was around. Maybe Brianna has just up and run away and doesn't want to be found. But that was not Bri. She would have never just gotten up and, said, well, I'm sick of this place. I think I'm just going to go away now and not talk to anybody ever again. She had a big heart. She would never do that to anybody.
And the runaway theory sounds even less likely when friends and family realize Brianna was without her primary form of transportation. Almost 1 week after their daughter was last seen, Kelly and Bruce Maitland visit the nearest state police station, 20 miles away in St. Albans.
We had pictures and said, help us find her. And then they asked Bruce what she was driving. And Bruce told them she was driving this green Oldsmobile.
A trooper pulls out a photograph of a vehicle found at the side of the road that previous Saturday.
And I saw a picture of the car. And I was like, oh my gosh. I got chills. My knees turned to jello. And I thought I was gonna vomit and lose it.
Although police don't describe it this way, Kelly realizes she's looking at a crime scene.
The back end of her car was driven into this abandoned building. There was something instinctive that I was just revulsed, just instantly revulsed. And I knew with a gut feeling that Brianna didn't put the car there. And that creeped me out even further. This was weird.
Even more unsettling to the Maitlands is how police discovered the vehicle in the first place. On the day after Brianna was last seen leaving work, a state trooper was dispatched to a car on Route 118 with its rear end rammed up against a lonely farmhouse surrounded by open fields. He got out of his cruiser and investigated the scene.
The vehicle was backed into this abandoned house. There was not a significant amount of damage to the vehicle or the house.
According to the trooper's report, nothing inside the car looked alarming. All he saw were personal effects, including 2 unopened paychecks from the Black Lantern Inn, addressed to Brianna Maitland. The trooper assumed the car was abandoned by a drunk driver.
We have our share of individuals that are operating under the influence, and it's not uncommon for troopers to either get called or come upon vehicles that are off the road.
The trooper recorded the car's license plate and headed over to the Black Lantern, a little over a mile away. But the restaurant was closed, and there was no one to talk to, so he resumed his patrol, apparently called away by more urgent business. Meanwhile, a towing company arrived to remove the vehicle and took it to a local auto shop in the hope the owner would eventually claim it. These pictures of the wreck, the only record of the scene at this point, were later given to state police by the owner of the damaged farmhouse. Upon hearing this story, Bruce Maitland's shock turns to dismay over why police failed to notify them sooner that the car had been located. But for Brianna's mother, Kelly, desperation has set in.
My mind was, I want her right now. I want her within minutes. Find her right now. And then we got a call, and it was our son who said, hey, I know where the car is. It's towed to an auto body. And at that point, my husband had started out toward the car.
When he arrives, Bruce learns the car's trunk hasn't been opened because the keys weren't recovered. Fearing the worst, he pulls out a crowbar to pry open the trunk. Coming up, witness accounts and more photos of the crime scene.
We certainly suspect that something bad happened that night.
Shortly after learning the location of his missing daughter Brianna's car, Bruce Maitland arrives at the service station where it has been sitting for 5 days. He finds Brianna's personal effects inside, including her paychecks, contact lenses, and migraine medication.
She had stuff in the car that she took with her everywhere, and it was all still there. Even if she was going to come right back, I don't think she would have left it there.
The car's keys are missing. But when Bruce learns that police haven't inspected the trunk, he immediately worries about what, or who, might be inside. with a silent prayer, he prized the trunk open.
They just didn't know what they were going to find. But thank goodness it wasn't her. She wasn't in there. But what was in there were the belongings of her girlfriend, her treasures that Brianna was keeping, and Brianna's items from her childhood.
The Maitlands are temporarily relieved, but they're now left to wonder if Brianna was taken against her will. They know if someone did abduct Brianna, who was trained in martial arts, she would not have gone without a fight.
Brianna was not one to be restrained by anything, and I don't think that she would have been easy to contain. I really don't. But when you have the situation and you don't really know what happened, you are willing to look at everything. You want no stone unturned.
At this point, Brianna's Aunt Tammy is still unaware of the family crisis.
The lines were all busy, and I couldn't get through to anybody.
Where 17-year-old Brianna Maitland's abandoned car was found after she vanished.
But I turned on my TV, and there was a picture of Brianna. My stomach turned, and my heart sank, and I just started throwing stuff in a suitcase, and it was like 11 o'clock at night, and I still got in my car and drove all the way.
By the next morning, Friday, March 26th, Tammy is in Vermont to help Bruce and Kelly.
It was mass chaos. Everybody's packing up to go search. I mean, everybody was in and out of the house. It was like Central Station. The police were there, and the news media was there. It was a mess.
Authorities still aren't sure if Brianna's gone missing or simply run away.
Not every runaway is a missing person. For them to sort through and figure out what they're dealing with takes time. And you as a parent have a gut that's screaming, what do I have to do?
Kelly spearheads efforts to design, print, and distribute missing person flyers.
Every business that was a business had one. Every other telephone pole had one.
Bruce Maitland is so concerned, he launches his own investigation in a search for answers.
Bruce went right away to the Black Lantern, where she was last seen, and he questioned everybody if he was there before the police.
Meanwhile, just over a mile away, the police deploy canine search units in the area surrounding the abandoned house where Brianna's car was originally found.
The windows are boarded up. There's no one living there. It's set just off the roadway, and it's a very open area. There's a field behind it.
In police searches of the property and surrounding fields, nothing turns up. Then, on March 30th, the state police begin to examine Brianna's car for evidence.
The car was brought to the state police barracks in St. Albans, and it was subsequently processed. The obvious things a crime scene search team is looking for are evidence of DNA and fingerprints.
All that investigators will say about the search is that nothing was found to indicate foul play. But back at the Maitland's farm near the Canadian border, very unsettling phone calls are coming in.
Strange rumors, your daughter's tied to a tree in the woods, or your daughter's been dumped in the lake.
But not every call is a disturbing tip. Brianna's Aunt Tammy answers one from another family with a missing daughter.
One of the first phone calls that I answered was one of the Murray family. But I didn't even know who they were at that point, and they were asking if we had found anything.
The Murray family in nearby New Hampshire are desperately looking for their 21-year-old daughter, Maura, who disappeared 5 weeks before Brianna. Her car was found 90 miles away from where Brianna's was found, also abandoned at the side of a road.
Maura Murray's car was like Brianna's car in a way, except someone had seen her one time after she got out of the car, and then she just disappeared. We weren't sure if there was someone finding a way to get these girls in their cars.
The Maitlands and Murrays wonder if a serial killer might be roaming the region. It's a theory police in Vermont and New Hampshire begin to investigate. 2 weeks after Brianna was last seen, the Maitlands get a helping hand from a national search group dedicated to finding missing juveniles, the Class Kids Foundation. On April 3rd, 4th, and 5th, more than 500 volunteers canvass areas within a 5-mile radius. All of this effort fails to produce a breakthrough, but the widespread publicity pays off when witnesses come forward saying they saw Brianna's car the night it ended up backed into that old deserted farmhouse. first known sighting of Brianna's abandoned car occurred when a man drove by sometime between 11:30 and 12:30, 10 to 70 minutes after she left work.
He believed the vehicle's headlights were on. He did not see anyone inside the vehicle or anyone else around the vehicle.
Another witness traveled past sometime between midnight and 12:30 a.m. and spotted a turn signal blinking on the car. The last possible sighting came in the early morning hours, at around 4 a.m., when Brianna's ex-boyfriend was driving home from a night of partying.
This person thought it might be her vehicle, didn't know for sure, didn't see anyone in it, didn't see anyone around it, and then left.
The accounts don't reveal anything substantial, but investigators get a huge boost when they hear from witnesses who actually photographed the scene. The morning after Brianna Maitland was last seen, two motorists on two separate occasions found the site at the Dutchburn house so bizarre that they stopped and snapped numerous pictures. Some of the photos appear here for the first time publicly.
These turned out to be extremely valuable to investigators in that there were no police photographs. So these are essentially the only photographs of that vehicle as it was found by witnesses.
One of the photographers tells police about objects the pictures don't readily show.
They actually observed some items on the ground outside the vehicle, to include some loose change, a water bottle, and a necklace or bracelet.
Authorities didn't quite know what to make of the new information, but police would later acknowledge that the responding trooper's initial assessment that this was a DUI accident wasn't correct.
We certainly suspect that something bad happened that night, but we don't know why she may have gone to this location. We don't know whether Brianna met somebody, ran into somebody, or if she came in contact with a complete stranger.
Coming up, investigators get a distressing tip.
That these drug dealers in this shack had Brianna.
Get more Disappeared online at investigationdiscovery.com. After 17-year-old Brianna Maitland went missing, her family launches another massive search for clues in rural northwestern Vermont. Nobody's given up hope of finding Brianna alive, but pictures of her abandoned car make many wonder if someone wished Brianna harm. It's not the first time in her life police have investigated this possibility. Almost 3 weeks before Brianna's disappearance, she attended a Friday night party with friends from her new high school.
Brianna was partying a lot. She was loud and goofy, an attention seeker. She did want attention from boys. She wanted to know that she was pretty. And even if it was a negative or positive attention that she got from a male, it was still attention.
On this night, Brianna got the wrong kind of attention, making one of her girlfriends jealous and angry. So Brianna left.
Brianna had went out to her boyfriend's truck and got in the truck and was no longer part of what was going on.
She went out to wait for him to come so they could leave.
Before long, Brianna's angry friend, Keely LaCrosse, came out to the truck.
She knocked on the window. Brianna rolled down the window and Keely apparently punched her in the face. Brianna ended up with a broken nose and a concussion. Her facial appearance was terrible. She looked like she had been beaten and beaten.
After Brianna was hospitalized, Shauna took her to the Vermont State Police to file a formal complaint.
I told her it'd probably be a good idea. Because of what had happened, she didn't want to make the situation worse. But she went with my instincts and filed a report against Keely.
Since Brianna was trained in self-defense, her parents asked her why she didn't fight back.
She said, well, I didn't want anyone to not like me, which did not make sense to me.
In the weeks after Brianna vanished, Keely LaCrosse is one of 7 people subpoenaed to testify about the disappearance. Shauna, also called to testify, asks Keely about the assault.
We just had a short conversation, and I had asked Keely what was going to be going on with the charges. And she kind of smugly replied, well, nothing's going to be happening because Bray's not around right now.
On April 9th, 3 weeks after Brianna vanished, the assault complaint against Keely LaCrosse is dropped. The Maitlands object, though they know their daughter may have agreed with the outcome.
She believed everyone was good. Everyone. And it's just some people just had more problems than others, but you just try to understand and work it out. And maybe that's naive, but she was just good-hearted like that. And I think someone took advantage of it.
Keely LaCrosse is also cleared of any involvement in Brianna's disappearance. As the search and investigation continues into the middle of April, rumors begin to circulate that Brianna's disappearance was related to illegal drug activity. At the time, Vermont had become a state fraught with narcotics trafficking and abuse.
There was a crack epidemic going on in the area. You're in upstate Vermont, and not a lot for the young kids to do, and unfortunately, drugs are a pastime.
Certainly Vermont's not immune to the drug problem. The markup for drugs that are transported into Vermont, the prices are on the street level are quite high, so there's money to be made by dealers.
In the weeks before Brianna disappeared, a drug ring was reportedly active in the area. Rumors circulate that Brianna may have crossed paths with known dealers at a party where hard drugs were said to be on hand. But many discount the notion that Brianna was anything more than a casual user.
She was experimenting with smoking marijuana. She told me that she had tried cocaine a couple times, and also that she had smoked crack a couple times. It was just her saying, I was at a party last night, and this was around, and I tried it. And I'd ask her, well, is this something that you liked? Are you going to continue with anything like this? And she said no, it was just a random thing here and there.
I don't think that Brianna had a drug problem. I believe she was a recreational user, but not a heavy user. She was 17 years old. She worked 2 jobs. Got her GED. It just wasn't something that she was involved in, although she did have contact with guys who were very much into the drug culture.
Just how much contact Brianna had with this crowd is a matter of conjecture. Fast forward to 4 weeks after she disappeared, and Brianna's family gets another haunting phone call. An anonymous tip that Brianna is being held against her will, which leads police straight to the drug ring that they've been hearing so much about. Almost a month into their investigation, the state police raid this farmhouse, 11 miles from where Brianna was last seen.
The troopers spoke with 2 of the occupants there about the tip they had received that Brianna was in the house. They were told that Brianna was not in the house, and the troopers were given permission to search, which they did.
Brianna isn't there. But troopers later found 6 grams of crack cocaine, marijuana, and drug trafficking items, including 2 handguns. 4 people in the house were questioned by police.
I was told that inside the home was Ramon Ryans, Nathaniel Jackson, Stephanie Machia, and Timothy Baum.
Ramon Ryans and Stephanie Machia were both cited into court for possession of marijuana and crack cocaine.
Machia made a deal with the state, pled guilty, and entered a diversion program. Ryans pled not guilty and was released pending trial. According to Vermont State Police, Nathaniel Lowe Jackson of New York City admits to knowing Brianna. But he and Ramon Ryans say they have no idea where she is or what happened to her.
My understanding was that Ryans and Jackson may have been cousins. They traveled to Vermont, upstate Vermont, specifically to sell drugs, and it seemed like the young girls in the area just loved these guys. They came into town and they were thought of as exotic. They didn't have jobs, they had money.
They had things, you know, it was kind of, they were living the life.
Brianna's roommate Jillian Stout told police that she was introduced to Nathaniel Jackson when Brianna brought him by the house 5 weeks before the disappearance. Jackson and Ryans were apparently seen with Brianna on other occasions as well.
She was seen at these parties with Ryans Jackson. I've spoke to many people who have told me that they can put them together, not just in a setting where there's other people involved or public setting, one-on-one. I know that she knew them, and I know that they knew her, and they're not admitting it.
The speculation about Brianna's alleged connections to people linked to drug activity continues. In the middle of June 2004, almost 3 months after Brianna vanished, the Vermont State Police announces it has ruled out any connection between Brianna and the disappearance of Maura Murray, the young woman who went missing in New Hampshire. Then, the lead detective drops a bombshell, saying Brianna owed someone money for drugs when she went missing.
And a local paper had started, a teenage girl had drug debt or something, and I didn't believe that. I mean, if you can prove it, yes. If you can't prove it, don't go there.
Bruce and Kelly Maitland are furious. Police can offer no proof of the assertion. Eventually, the newspaper publishes a retraction, and the Vermont State Police apologize to the Maitlands and pledge to work more closely with the family.
I don't portray my daughter as an angel. I think she's an average teenager. I think she was trying to get her life on track. I think she went to a couple parties. But to come out with this is kind of like a blame the victim. Like, well, oh, she had it coming, she deserved it, or whatever. And there's nothing further from the truth.
Coming up, 2 years pass without a hint of resolution. Then a dramatic turn and astonishing video.
You want to see what you want to see, and there was a crack of hope.
Nearly 2 years after she disappeared, Brianna Maitland is about to materialize 500 miles away from her family and friends in Vermont. Or so it would seem. It's a typical night at Caesar's Palace in Atlantic City. Gamblers are playing the slots and rolling the dice. But at this poker table, an out-of-towner from Vermont spots this woman. She looks remarkably like Brianna Maitland. Her mother, Kelly, is stunned to see the footage.
It was very grainy, it was from an odd angle, and I hadn't seen my daughter for years, and I didn't know. Some of the motions were similar to motions that Brianna used, and she had longer dark hair like Brianna, and she looked slim like Brianna.
Vermont and New Jersey State Police attempt to find the woman and her male companion.
Probably the most promising sighting we had was down here in Atlantic City, and that was on.
But they have no luck. Investigators and the Maitlands are left to decide if this is Brianna, based solely on the video.
I was indecisive. Every time it was it could be, but it might not be. And I want it to be, but yet I want to be sure. And a media agency did clean up that tape and get better resolution, and they caught it, and I looked and I saw it wasn't her. And then I was back where I started.
It's a huge letdown. But the hope that Brianna is out there, still alive, keeps Kelly on the lookout.
Well, you're always looking. If someone matches close enough how she looks, I'll track them down to make sure.
But even if Brianna is still alive, her friends worry that she won't be in the safest of circumstances.
If she was still alive, my automatic thoughts go back to the possibility of a drug ring. Maybe she had to work in some kind of sex slave ring to pay off debt.
Drugs and addiction are often used to coerce women into sexual slavery. According to a University of Pennsylvania study, sex trafficking has become a scourge throughout the U.S., with an estimated 100,000 to 300,000 children under the age of 18 at risk of being exploited. But was this Brianna's fate?
I don't know. Brianna is beautiful. Brianna is very attractive, and I think that might be the type of person that they would have looked for. But she'd fight back and run. She would do what she'd been trained to do. The only thing is, if there was more than one assailant, or if they had weapons, they would have the edge.
Whether or not sex trafficking was involved, the Vermont State Police still struggled to piece together what happened that night at the old abandoned farmhouse.
We certainly at this point suspect foul play in this case. We obviously are looking at everything. We follow every lead.
If investigators have any evidence to work with, they aren't saying, particularly when it comes to what might have been found in Brianna's vehicle.
We do have physical evidence that was taken out of the vehicle, but because this is an active investigation, we are not prepared to comment on exactly what physical evidence that we have.
Police continue to work the angle that Brianna had a connection to those arrested in that drug house raid. Over a year after being charged with possession, police question Ramon Ryans about Brianna's disappearance. His information doesn't help, but in exchange for his cooperation, his drug charge gets knocked down to a misdemeanor. He's released for time served and reportedly leaves Vermont. Then, in 2007, Ryan's name comes up again, leaving the Maitland's private investigator wondering if Ryans knows more than he's saying. Almost 3 years after Brianna disappeared, a Vermont newspaper publishes a shocking report. A police officer gave a sworn statement that a local woman told him Brianna Maitland was murdered and dismembered by, among others, Ramon Ryans.
And the story pertained to Brianna, and it was extremely gruesome. Talked about the disposal of her body and things like that. It's odd, if you read the statement, you would wonder how someone can concoct such a story that sounds like something that Stephen King would be proud of.
We were never able to substantiate any of that information or corroborate that these individuals were involved in Brianna's disappearance.
The person who gave the statement was not exactly trustworthy.
Overacker has independently investigated many of the rumors that implicate individuals allegedly involved with drugs in Brianna's disappearance.
I've done some interviews with friends of these guys, Jackson, Ryans. It's odd that the more people you interview, the more those names always come up. And, you know, the stories are persistent, but we haven't gotten to the point where we can differentiate whether it's rumor or it's the truth. The fact of the matter is we don't know what happened.
Nathaniel Jackson and Ramon Ryans have never been charged in connection to Brianna Maitland's disappearance. But recent chatter leads Overacker to believe that the truth about Brianna might be close at hand.
People told us that she was contacted and asked to show up at the Dutchburn home voluntarily to meet someone there.
Private investigator Overacker doesn't know exactly what happened at the meeting place, but he has a theory.
We know that the car was spotted with the lights on, which seems to make you think that she was taken from the vehicle quickly. She showed up, there was a confrontation, and during that confrontation, she attempted to exit. And when she attempted to, she drove into the building and they extracted her from the vehicle. And that they hustled her away from there.
But what was the likely motive? Overacker believes it was simple. Men wanting control over Brianna.
Brianna was known as being extremely charismatic, extremely beautiful. She may have been abducted because she's a beautiful young woman, which happens all the time. It happens every day. Sometimes that's cause enough. There doesn't have to be some other higher reason that everybody tries to think of, that, she was in debt or she was doing drugs.
Still, Brianna's mother, Kelly, keeps any and all possibilities on the table.
We haven't had our proof. We haven't had a find. I mean, yes, there are people that do break the law, but does that necessarily mean that they are the suspect here? It could very well be someone that we don't even know. Someone from the community that had an eye on her. There are so many options out there.
This case is extremely frustrating. but I can't fathom, as a parent, what Bruce and Kelly Malin go through on a daily basis and have gone through for 7 years now. I'm personally in contact with them. We are definitely committed to continuing this investigation. We want to provide them with closure.
In order for this to come to a resolution, someone's got to come forward.
The Maitlands continue to offer a $20,000 reward for anyone with information on Brianna's location, which leads to an arrest. Still, Kelly and Bruce realize that they may never know the truth. But for as long as they live, they won't give up looking for their daughter.
I still have maintained faith through the whole thing. And like Brianna, I believe in justice. I believe if I don't see it here, I'm going to see it in the hereafter. If I can't have her here, I hope to see her in the hereafter. And that's where I'm at and what I look to and what I can do for now is just hang on to faith.
you.